Hello everyone, back tuning in today's second video. We're going to have a look at the weather for the next week to 10 days for today's second video. This is going to take us to around the 15th of January. So we're heading into the middle part of the month with the week to 10 day updates now. I'm going to extend out beyond that with the GFS and the ECM ensembles, which runs around 2 weeks, and also the CFS V2 for the next month as well. So, we've had a sudden stratospheric warming, we know that. Temperatures have peaked at 10 and 30 HPA and are now beginning to cool down. It's now going to be a case of waiting to see what, if any, response we get to this sudden stratospheric warming in the troposphere. And we're going to be looking for northern blocking over the next week or two, see where we start setting up a bubble of high pressure in the North Pole. If we do, we might start to push very cold air out of the North Pole. But of course, it isn't guaranteed. There is no guarantee that you will get extensive blocking and cold conditions following a sudden stratospheric warming. We have been very lucky with the sudden stratospheric warmings that we've had over the past few years from a blocking and cold perspective, but they don't all end up in extensive northern blocking. And so we're just going to have to wait and see how this plays out. I'll talk you through the latest charts very shortly. Just say weekend forecast has been released, so temperature's going to be a bit up and down in the weekend, but always keeping quite a strong high pressure signal close to the south and the west of the country. Anyway, have a look at weekend forecast, see what's going on. So we're just going to start off with this chart. This is from weatheriscool.com. This is depicting the zonal winds at 10 HPA. Zonal winds are in a reverse, of course, at the moment. This is where we are right now with the zonal winds. We are underneath the all-important zero line, which is around there. GFS ensembles, which are the green lines just here, they're forecasting the zonal winds to stay in reverse over the next couple of weeks, actually. So even 2 weeks away at the end of the GFS run, we still see that the zonal winds are generally easterly. They're generally in reverse, even up to around 2 weeks away, which takes us well into the middle and even into the second half of January, of course. So with the zonal winds being in reverse, it's going to give plenty of time for the sudden stratospheric warming to propagate into the troposphere and potentially set up a northern blocking scene. It's not like you're going to just have a day or two of reversal of the zonal winds, 10 HPA, and then they're going to go back positive again. This is a prolonged and protracted period of negativity of the zonal winds, and it will potentially give the chance of the troposphere to respond to this sudden stratospheric warming. You can see how much weaker than average the zonal winds are. This is where the zonal winds should be at this point of the year, somewhere around here. So, obviously way below that, and it's not going to be until the second half of January that we see any sort of recovery back to positivity of the zonal winds. Generally, the CFS V2 members, which are the three pink, one blue line just here, they're taking the zonal winds back into positive territory in the second half of January. But it's not until we get into February, really, that zonal winds get back towards trend. So a prolonged period of negativity, of easterly zonal winds, and we should wait and see whether the troposphere starts to respond. It will also split the polar vortex as well. So we've got these brighter colours here. This is from Metroseal.fr. This is the latest GFS run. For today, we've got these brighter colours here through that area, and then of course we've got the two lobes of blue over here. There's another lobe of blue over there, so I think this might be a three-way split that's occurred here to the polar vortex, which is quite unusual. Somebody's asked me what the implications of that will be, and I'm not sure actually what the implications of the polar vortex splitting in three would be. I'm not sure if it makes any difference if you get a split of three parts of the polar vortex, or if it's just two. So if anybody knows what the impacts of that could be, then please let me know, because I'm not sure that makes much difference or not. But it does look certainly as though we have split the polar vortex as well. So that's the last thing we was waiting for from this sudden stratospheric warming. We see the polar vortex does sort of regather itself, particularly over America and the Atlantic as we go through the course of the coming week. Although potentially a little bit of split again occurring there, perhaps around the 11th or the 12th, but I'm not sure that quite meets the criteria of a split of the polar vortex. And then we go into more extended range. That's how we're looking. So as we go towards the second half of January, we do see these blue colours really starting to get their act together then. So the polar vortex, certainly for the next 10 days, remains pretty weak, pretty displaced, and it's had a real kicking. But as we get through to the second half of January, this period from around the 18th, 19th, we do see the polar vortex then at its roots starting to reactivate, reconfigure itself up over Greenland and into the North Pole as well. So temperatures cooling down going into the second half of January. That will almost certainly be associated with a reversal back to westerly zona winds as well. So in the second half of January, it looks like everything starts to recover in terms of what's happening in the stratosphere. It begins to get itself back into a recovery mode the second half of January after having stuffing knocked out of it in the first half of January. But of course, by this point, that's in the stratosphere. By this point, we're going to be looking at what's going on in the troposphere, whether we are getting this response in the troposphere to what has just happened in the stratosphere. And that's what we're going to be focusing on in the next week or two. Centering temperature for January is looking like this. So it's I haven't shown you this for a few days, and it was a very, very mild start to January. For New Year's Day, the CET came out above 8 degrees, which is something like 4 degrees above average. But the CET has really collapsed over the last 2 or 3 days. Unfortunately, I haven't had time to show you this day by day. It's been a very entertaining drop that has occurred in the CET over the past 5 days, or past 4 days, as this is updated to yesterday, since New Year's Day. So although New Year's Day came out with CET over 8 degrees, yesterday it was down to 3.3 degrees, provisional to the 4th of January, which is an anomaly of actually 0.1 of a degree below average. So we've shaved off like 5 degrees in 2 or 3 days there from the CET. Very dramatic movements through this first week of January. I think that will level off, and it will probably start ticking up actually a little bit next week, because I think next week will be a little bit milder, especially towards the second half of next week. So very entertaining what's going on with CET anyway over the past few days. GFS ensembles are looking like this, looking at Bista. Today, someone's asked me to have a look at Bista. So, we've got the red line here, which is the 30-year upper air temperature average. And we're starting off with the upper air temperatures quite mild at the moment. They are way above average. And, of course, we haven't had an inversion. So, it's cold down on the surface. We've had frost. We've got this low cloud as well. Pretty grim conditions, really, with daytime temperatures only like 2 or 3 degrees. And night times where the skies are clear anyway, becoming quite frosty. Now, a cold snap is on the way through Tuesday and Wednesday. That's the drop in the upper air temperatures that you see there. Winds are going to go into the north. Then in the second half of next week, into next weekend, the temperature will be lifting up. After that, as we go to middle of January and then into the second half of the month, the trend with the GFS ensembles is definitely downwards, going cooler, even colder perhaps, as we go through into second half of January. I'm hoping to do an Ensembles Watch tomorrow. I know a lot of you enjoy Ensembles Watch. I've had a few people asking when we're going to have the next Ensembles Watch. It's just when I've got time in the evening, really, to be able to do it. And the easiest day to do Ensembles Watch is Sunday. So hopefully there will be an Ensembles Watch coming up for you tomorrow evening. We'll go through all GFS Ensemble members, see how many of them are shaping up colder through the middle and second half of January. Precipitation-wise for Bista, so again, lots of dry weather over the next week to 10 days. High pressure is going to be in control for England and Wales. Anyway, a little bit more unsettled up in the north, but for England and Wales, high pressure will be in control. Through the middle and second half of January, turning a little bit more unsettled, but again, as we keep saying, that's a very dry ensemble for what is the middle of winter, when we should be getting appreciable amounts of rain. That does look pretty dry once again there, that ensemble that we see for Bista. Temperature anomalies are forecast to be a little bit milder than average now from the 5th through to the 13th of January. So next week will be a milder week, even encompassing a cold snap that's on the way for Tuesday and Wednesday. Temperatures overall for the week coming out slightly milder than average. Precipitation anomalies still very dry precipitation anomalies for the UK, Ireland, much of Western Europe from the 5th to the 13th of January. This is the GFS operational run, showing winds in from the north on Tuesday, so it could bring wintry showers to northern and eastern parts of the country, when high pressure topples in over the country through the middle of next week. Still keeping it quite cold, maybe some pretty hard overnight frost, but winds will start to come round top of that high from off the Atlantic. And so as we go to the end of next week and next weekend, we're bringing in much more of an Atlantic feeder there, although notice turning very cold across Scandinavia and much of central northeastern parts of Europe. Really severely cold there with those Arctic northerly winds. For us, we're bathed in these mild winds from off the Atlantic through next weekend, so not much in the way of cold weather running up towards day 10. That is day 10. It looks a little bit more unsettled there. We're bringing low pressure in from off the Atlantic. That's bringing wet weather across many parts of the country. And then it's going to the extended range of this GFS run. It goes a little bit odd because we very weakly get a weak sort of area or ridge of high pressure developing to the north and northeast. We've got very cold air, of course, across much of northern Europe, Scandinavia, many central northern northeast parts of Europe. A big cold pool is sitting up there, and that's generating this little bit of a ridge to the north of the UK, which starts to block the progress of these areas of low pressure. So they start to slide with the jet stream in that sort of direction in the northwest southeast alignment, and gradually we start turning things colder through this extended GFS run. So by the time we get through to the 19th of January, we really are biting in a cold north to northeast wind, which will be bringing snow showers to many northern eastern parts of the country anyway. That's how we look at the very end of the GFS run, which is Monday the 21st of January. Still looking cold, maybe even very cold, with winds in from the north. Trying to get a bit of a blocking feature going. We've got a mid-Atlantic ridge here through the middle of the North Atlantic Ocean, and it is trying to get itself up towards Greenland as well. It's still not genuine northern blocking there, but it's certainly trying to get itself into that sort of direction. So the third week of January does turn a lot colder on the GFS operational run. This is the GFS parallel run. Again, we see winds in from the north on Tuesday, so a little bit of a cold snap coming up in the weekend. It doesn't last all that long. And by the time you get through to the second half next week, we're building this high pressure over the country. Initially quite cold with frost and fog probable at night. But by the time you get through to next weekend, we are pushing through milder winds from off the Atlantic. So next weekend looking cloudy, but also quite mild. Heading up towards day 10, that's how we look. And again, we're trying to turn things a little bit colder from the north. We've got a weather front that's moving outbreaks of rain southwards across the UK, and then behind it, we've got quite a lot of cold air pushing down from the north. That turns into a genuine northerly wind as we get a little bit beyond day 10. This is Wednesday, 16th of January, with a proper northerly wind there feeding down across the country. Again, it doesn't last very long. These areas of low pressure start to break through from off the Atlantic. That's how we finish up with the parallel GFS run, which is Monday the 21st of January. Looking rather unsettled. Again, there is quite a lot of cold air sitting to our north and northeast. You see it there with the upper air temperatures. Very cold across much of Scandinavia, much of central northeastern Europe. These areas of low pressure are trying to move in from off the Atlantic and dislodge that cold air. There's no genuine blocking feature, really. It's just that the cold pool is so deep and extensive that the milder Atlantic winds are really struggling as they're coming up against it. And so it's possible that this could be the start of getting an area of high pressure built over Scandinavia or somewhere to our north. But it's a bit inconclusive. Up to the 21st of January, as far as we can go, there isn't much sign of genuine northern blocking with the parallel GFS run. That's how the ECM is looking. Again, we have this little cold snap on Tuesday into Wednesday, and then we build the high pressure across the country before we push milder air in off the Atlantic over next weekend. A little bit more unsettled with the ECM, I have to say. Low pressure for next weekend. Low pressure is deeper and closer to us, and it does eventually pull in another northerly shot here on Sunday the 13th of January. But GFS isn't showing that at all, but the ECM does pull down another pretty cold northerly. Actually, that's a colder northerly next weekend than what we've got coming up on Tuesday and Wednesday. But again, without any sort of genuine blocking to support that northerly, very quickly the next low just rolls in from off the Atlantic. That's how we look at day 10, which is Tuesday the 15th of January. It looks unsettled and cold. Really got low pressure sitting over and to the north of the UK, so it's very unsettled. But again, we have got quite a lot of cold air coming around this area of low pressure, albeit it's taking quite a long sea fetch, so will be moderated by the Atlantic a fair amount, at least initially. It is pretty chilly, that, and as this low pressure exits away to the east, of course, then eventually you will find genuine northerly winds pushing down from the Arctic. So that looks like it's setting up another northerly, actually, at day 10. That's how the upper air temperatures look. They don't look as severely cold with the ECM as they are with the GFS across Scandinavia and northern parts of Europe anyway. Pretty chilly there at day 10. But I think if we could roll another 24 hours, we will find that low pressure pushing away to the east and turning winds into the north. One thing of note is that the ECM by day 10, in terms of its northern hemisphere pattern, is showing a bit of a split within the polar vortex down in the 500 millibar level at day 10 over the North Pole. So that could lead to interesting developments a little bit further on, of course. ECM ensembles are looking like this. So this is how the ensembles look at day 10, which is the 15th of January, with the postage stamps via the Icelandic Met Office. So we've got 22 ensemble members in the ECM ensembles that have low pressure to the north and to the northeast of the country. These are very similar to what the ECM operation run is showing. Actually, they're very unsettled. Pretty cool as well. The air is coming from the northern Atlantic around this trough. It is modified a lot by the North Atlantic Oscillation, by the North Atlantic sea surface temperature anomalies, because there is a long sea fetch to those sort of northwesterly winds. But they are quite chilly, probably enough to produce wintry showers for northern parts of the country. Then we've got another 16 ensemble members that have the below average heights low pressure, a little bit more centred to the east of the country. Again, means they have quite a long Atlantic sea fetch, but again, they are quite chilly, maybe a bit colder with these 16 than we see with these 22. And then we've got another 13 that look like that, including the operational ECM run that has the low pressure centred almost over the top of the UK. Again, not mild, because the air around the area of low pressure is coming from the northern Atlantic, albeit with a modified long Atlantic sea fetch. But all looking rather showery, all looking rather unsettled at day 10, and all looking rather cool as well. These 16 just here within the ECM ensembles, they would be the coldest, because they have just that little bit more of a northerly component to them and less of an Atlantic sea fetch. And then at 360 hours, which is 2 weeks away, on the 20th of January, this is how the ECM ensembles are looking. 51 out of 51, so that's 100% of ECM ensemble members have a mid-Atlantic ridge, high pressure through the middle of the Atlantic, and extending up towards Greenland. So I wouldn't say that's necessarily northern blocking at this point, because it's a relatively weak ridge, but certainly there is a mid-Atlantic ridge there. It is trying to get itself up to Greenland, with below average heights. Low pressure then is centred with all of these 51 ECM ensemble members centred to the east of the UK, and this leaves us probably with quite a cold and showery north to northeasterly winds. So by sort of 2 weeks away, the ECM ensembles appear to be trending colder. They aren't yet going for genuine northern blocking around Greenland, but they have got a mid-Atlantic ridge. They are ridging that mid-Atlantic ridge towards Greenland. And we've got the trough there centred across central parts of Europe. So either northerly or possibly northeasterly winds would be favoured with those ensemble members. Well, that's 2 weeks away, and we've got 51 out of 51 ensemble members going for that. So really good agreement for such an extended time frame from the ECM ensembles. Let's just have a look at CFS V2 before we go. So these are 500 millibar heights, break it down into weekly periods. The first weekly period takes us from the 5th to the 11th of January, with above average heights in the coming week centred over, or just that little bit to the northwest of the country. Winter really biting in the east and the southeast of Europe by the way of that trough of low pressure just there. That'll be bringing a lot of cold air and heavy snow to much of southern and southeastern Europe. So again, places like the Balkans, around that Adriatic area, over towards southern and eastern parts of Italy, Greece, Romania, those sort of areas are likely to be really hit very badly up towards the Black Sea by heavy snow and really cold conditions in the week ahead. We are protected by that cold air quite a lot by this ridge of high pressure that's over and just to the northwest of the country. Week 2 is looking like this. It's the 12th to the 18th of January. So it's rather messy at this point. We've got below average heights to our east generally, so quite cold conditions, you would have thought, for much of Central and Northern Europe. We have got a bit of a ridge of above average heights down to our southwest though, so that's trying to feed in mild air from off the Atlantic for us, but at the same time we are trying to feed in colder air from the northeast, so that's a little bit messy. We could have a range of air masses close to the country there, between really quite mild conditions just out to our west and pretty cold conditions over to our east. It all sort of simplifies as we get through to week 3. This is the 19th to the 25th of January. The below average heights then as a trough is sitting across central parts of Europe, and we have a strong ridge of above average heights through the northern Atlantic going towards southern Greenland. That looks a lot colder. That's bringing wind in from the northeast. This is a trend within the CFS this week, has been regularly going with this idea for weeks 3 and 4, so into the second half of January, building up the blocking signal in the northern Atlantic and eventually moving it up towards Greenland with a trough of low pressure through central parts of Europe. And then that's how we look with week 4, 26th of January to the 1st of February. Again, blocking signal close to Greenland and Iceland. Low pressure is to the south and southeast of the UK. We will be pulling in cold, maybe in very cold, east or northeast wind. And with this trough of low pressure to our south, that will be engaging with this cold air. You certainly wouldn't be ruling out the chance of some significant snow with that as we get through to the end of January and the start of February. So the CFS is still going with this idea, but as we go through January, the blocking signal is increased, it gets stronger, and particularly in the final week to 10 days of January, we could be unleashing some really quite potent wintry weather. Before that, it all looks a little bit on and off, a little bit up and down with the temperature, and then kind of like the final week to 10 days of January, that's when the CFS consistently wants to lock in that blocking signature. So again, it's just a case of waiting to see where this is all going. We have had the southern stratospheric warming. The zonal winds are going to stay in reverse at least the next 2 weeks. Gives plenty of time to start getting a tropospheric response going. The CFS, I think, definitely wants to set up a tropospheric response. The shorter range models, the GFS, the ECM, they aren't quite there yet. But read between the lines, they might be starting to trend in that sort of direction. So second half of January is when things get really quite interesting from a cold and snow perspective. Right, so that's it for today's videos. Tomorrow we're bringing back the Gauss Weather Study Roundup, although I'm not going to be able to include as much in that as I wanted to due to the ongoing shutdown in America. So I'll talk more about that in the Sunny Roundup anyway. You'd probably be surprised to know why Donald Trump's shutdown of the government in America would affect Gauss Weather, but I'll explain that tomorrow. But there will be the Sunny Roundup. We'll discuss as much as we can anyway within that. And also, as I say, tomorrow I'm hoping to have Ensembles Watch for you as well. So that'll be with you tomorrow. That's all for now, and thanks for watching.